she got a hold on me.
After living in Brisbane for nearly a decade, I always appreciate getting back out in the country. Long, straight roads disappearing into a far, far horizon. And country towns each half hour or so along the road, with cafes and roadhouses owned by local people rather than fast food franchises.
She'll give you a taste if you give her time.
For a while now, I wanted to check out Thrushton National Park, one of the smaller parks in the near western grazing districts of Queensland.
That girl, she's like the finest wine. Now drink until my heart is full.
Well, it's 5:30. We've just arrived at Thrushton National Park and it's still 37 degrees and the sun's setting. In the beginning, the settlers lived in a simple bark and timber hut, but as the property prospered, they purchased part of the old Dunkeld Hotel and dragged it here using 40 draft horses to establish a new homestead. The structure is fenced off now, so you can't enter the house. So we kept on moving and looked for a camp for the night. Well, it looks like there's a bit of a camping area at the back here where people have pulled up a couple of campfires. So I'll swing back into there, and tomorrow morning we'll go and explore inside the old wool shed. And we've got plenty of clear room behind us there. And the van's nice and straight. And here's where we get to check whether it's level. So I've got the Savvy Level app on my phone. You can see it's connected through and it's telling us that we're about 10 mil high on the right hand side and about 10 mil high at the back. And we can sort this one out with the jockey wheel or raise and lowering of the airbags on the car. But normally we want the left hand side of the trailer to be slightly higher, knowing that it sags down when the kitchen's extended. So I'll put a levelling ramp under the left hand side and we'll turn that into a 10 mil the other way. Well, it's still 35 degrees and it's after 6 o'clock in the evening. It's going to be a warm one. I'll get set up now. I'm just going to use the TVAN quick setup with the insect screen across the back opening. There's a few mozzies and flies around, but hopefully not too bad. But first things first, I'm going to get dinner going and we'll set the Weber up and get some chicken on the go. And tonight's speciality is some, I think it's Portuguese flavour, barbecue rub flavour, chicken pieces. And the idea of this is I'll have nice barbecue chicken for lunch tomorrow as well. So it's the winner, chicken dinner, as I say in the classics. It's only when you camp in the remote far western bush that you really appreciate just what quietness can be like. However, once morning broke, those birds and crickets started off again, and it was a nice time of morning, made all the better with a cup of coffee and some hot porridge. Double shot, double the goodies. No, a bug in my coffee. Thrushton was established in the early 1900s by a young family of a returned digger who took up land that was offered by the government for returning servicemen. Most of the Western Queensland properties were used for sheep grazing, for both wool and for mutton, at least until overgrazing and then the rabbit plagues took away much of the vegetation and ruined these fragile ecosystems. When doing some research before coming out to Thrushton, I stumbled across a book written by Jim Gasteen, a young guy who was raised at Thrushton during the 20s, 30s and 40s, what you might call its heydays. His book, titled Under the Mulga, is a collection of memoirs of what it was like to be raised on a working sheep station, its hard times, and then ultimately it faltered and he had to leave the land. I guess what it's like to be a day in the life of a merino sheep. They would have been shepherded into these yards. Looks like the dipping tank over there. They would have been pushed through there and yarded on their way down to be clipped, and then unceremoniously dumped half naked back out of the wool shed into another yard. Any nicks and cuts would have been patched up with hot tar, and they would have been set free out in the paddock somewhere. So yeah, wouldn't want to be a sheep. Especially because the place is full of these prickly plants, and there's these itty bitty little thorns that get into your sock. Then when you pluck them out of your sock, they stick in your finger. And imagine if you had a nice woolly coat, you'd be full of the things by the time you got shorn. I love coming to places like this, particularly where I've read about them. There's been an autobiography or a documentary recounting the history of the place, because the scene can come to life somehow even though it's derelict and ruined, you can picture scenes from the book and how it would have come together. But I always have mixed emotions because, as I mentioned, it's now a derelict ruin. It's falling apart. It's man's ugly blight on the landscape. And then amongst all that, I'm continuously amazed and in awe at what humans can do. Out here in the 40-degree heat, or 100 back then, 100 plus, they cut down trees and split logs and dug holes and wove their own wire netting. Now we complain if we've got to run out of roll of netting and build a fence, but they had to construct it from raw material. It's just amazing. Amazing what they could do. So you can see under the shearing shed there, all of the sheep poo, which has persisted and hasn't rotted away after all this time. It falls through the cracks, falls through the gaps rather, in the timber floor of the shearing shed. And unfortunately there's a lot of kangaroo skeletons and sheep skeletons there. Actually that one's a goat, sorry. Where they've perhaps come to shelter in the shade and eventually perished if there was no water here. It certainly stinks. It smells like death. And there was a bore supplying water that ran down an open drain into this area, but the National Parks capped the bore off, I think in 2007, to conserve the underground water, which makes sense. But it inevitably would have resulted in quite a few of the animals in the area that relied on that water perishing. So yeah, as you can see, more skeletons and bones everywhere. This is where it would have all happened. See the overhead drive system for the shears. Would have been powered on a belt from this little single cylinder petrol engine. Would have been chugging away, filling the place with even more heat and fumes. Or perhaps this bigger jobby over here. You see the radiator is just a 44-gallon drum. And you can see there those floorboards deliberately left with gaps so that the sheep dung could fall through. We've been stinking hot, plenty of flies, the aroma of fresh sheep dung coming up through the floor. And we'd be bent over shearing all day. They were certainly tougher people than we. And I'd say that's what the poor old branding fluid, so it would have been the ink to brand the sheep or mark the bales. Well, you probably can't see this, but is the old wool baler. The Warrigal Bull Press, made expressly for Winchcombe Carson by the patent There you go. The Warrigal Wool Press. We've brought the fleeces in here, jammed them in that thing, clamped on the handle, and compressed them into bales. And then shipped them out here to send to market. Well, the day got hotter and the flies got thicker, so it was time to pack up camp and start to wander homeward. My plan was to head north to Mitchell to refuel and then stop and look at a couple of campsites on the way home as a backup for the travelling to when we're either heading out or returning from some of our longer distance trips. To join us on our trips, either keep an eye on our YouTube channel or better still subscribe to get a notification whenever the travelling to are on the road.